Hi, I'm Lynn Pearson, here in my home in Walnut Creek, California. Thank you for dropping by. I want to share with you some information and some stories from my new book. The title is The Ghost of Eternal Polygamy, subtitle Haunting the Hearts and Heaven of Mormon Women and Men. I think it's one of the most important things that I have ever written. Well, today is July 1st, 2016. We all know that anybody in the LDS Church who enters polygamy is immediately excommunicated. But polygamy itself has never been excommunicated. It is still a member in good standing. It has an honored and protected place at the family table. It is not an artifact in a museum. It is alive and unwell. It is a ghost that haunts many of us as individuals in our marriages and causes a lot of chaos in family relationships. And I'm thrilled to be able to give to you this book. And today, a few excerpts. I'm going to begin with my personal story. I can remember the moment I first learned about eternal polygamy, almost as clearly as the moment I learned of the assassination of President Kennedy. It was 1956, and I was a junior at Brigham Young University High School in Provo, Utah, where every day we spent an hour of class time in religious study, a course we called seminary. I remember where I was sitting in the room. I remember the blackboard behind Brother Anderson, our much-loved teacher. This day he wore a gray suit and a blue tie. I don't remember what the lesson was, possibly the importance of our remaining virtuous and being careful whom and how we dated. But I clearly remember how he said in a very serious tone, "Students, I am going to tell you now something that is deeply important and very tender to me personally." I perked up and listened. I wanted to learn everything I could that was deeply important. My dear wife, a wonderful woman, died some years ago. Later, I met and married the woman who is my wife today, also a wonderful woman. She is sealed to me in the temple by the authority of the holy priesthood, as was my first wife. I love them both. Dear young brothers and sisters, I bear you my testimony that in the eternities I will claim both of these women as my wives and that we will live together forever. And further, I bear you my testimony that similarly our Father in heaven has many wives, our mothers in heaven. The doctrine that we call plural marriage, restored by the prophet Joseph Smith in these latter days, is an essential part of the gospel and is the way the heavens are organized and eternal life is extended. I know this may sound strange to you today, especially to you young women, but I promise you that as you live the gospel, as you grow in unselfishness, as you become more pure, you will realize the beauty of this principle, and you will yearn to live it. We are not allowed to live it today, but if we are righteous, we will be called to live it in the eternities. This is my testimony to you today, and I know that what I have said is true. I remember walking the 6 blocks from school to my home. Brown leaves crunching on the sidewalk, a heavy sweater pulled tight around me. There was something new in my chest that I had never felt before. Something very cold and very confusing. Maybe most of the kids in that seminary class didn't pay much attention to what we had just heard, or didn't care. I paid attention, and I cared, and I believed. There was no young Mormon girl more devoted to being righteous than I was. The words that I had heard went round and round in my head. This is what God has in store for me? The God who created me, who loves me? This is how heaven works? I'll be one of many wives forever? I was 16, very aware that I was developing into a woman, dreaming about being loved, being kissed, being married, very aware of where in the room the boy I had a crush on was sitting. And now, this. I must have known about polygamy of long ago, way back in the days of the pioneers, but I didn't know about polygamy as our eternal destiny, forever and ever. It had to be true. My seminary teacher had borne his testimony to us. For the first time in my life, the ground split, and there was a frightening divide between me and God, between me and God's church. I would not have been able to articulate it at that time, but I had begun a painful journey toward an impossible goal, a goal that lasted a long time. How to love a God who hurts you. Well, that was a long time ago. And I remember the years that I spent in extraordinary pain, as eternal polygamy was sort of the linchpin to the obvious truth that was evident all around me, that maleness was somehow more important than femaleness was. Why, I didn't know. I was as good and as smart as any boy. But somehow God had chosen to be male. And the eternity that God had planned for all of us favored men and brought enormous pain to the hearts of women. I have since decided that there was huge misunderstanding about all of that. And I have given up my fear and given up my belief in the concept of eternal polygamy. Here's another story that I want to share with you, this one also from the past. My great-grandparents, James and Mary Oakey, were converted to the LDS Church in Nottingham, England, along with thousands of other enthusiastic people. James was a lace maker. In fact, I have here in my hand a beautiful little sample of the lace that James helped to make, so lovingly, carefully brought over on a wagon train. I treasure this piece of history of ancestors that I love. The story that I'm going to tell is one that caused me a lot of curiosity and hurt in my growing up years. All I knew, essentially, was that in the year 1873, my great-grandmother Mary left her husband James on the day that he brought home, as a surprise, a second wife. I have known since May 30th, 1972, the general story of what happened. I found the account in my diary. Married for 6 years and the mother of 3 children, I wanted to learn all I could about the family history. So I spent the day with Aunt Mamie, the older sister of my mother Emmeline, who had passed away when I was in high school. Aunt Mamie had brought to our home in Provo, Utah, pictures and genealogy sheets. All she knew of what happened in the Oakey family in 1873 was very sketchy. Later I quizzed other relatives, anyone I thought might have more light, but all anyone seemed to know were just the bare facts. Again, I am going to take dramatic license and construct a scene that might represent those facts. I want to insert here that during this time, a man was really heavily encouraged to enter the principle of polygamy. In order to rise in the church, a man had to be a polygamist. And so I'm certain that there was considerable pressure put on my great-grandfather James, who had been a significant leader of the church in England, but somehow he had not entered the principle up until 1873. And this is the scene that I am constructing that might represent the facts as I learned them. It is twilight in the 2-room log cabin of the Oakey family in Paris, Idaho. The 3 children who still live at home, Alfred 24, Sarah 19, and Hiram 14, sit at the table reading or sewing by the light of the coal oil lamp. Mary, whose hands are always busy, mends a quilt that covers her lap. There is the sound of horses and a wagon. A muffled voice calls the horses to a stop. Hiram closes his book and looks up expectantly. "Father's home." Mary places the quilt on the chair and opens the door, letting in the chill of an early October evening. In a moment, James enters slowly. He takes off his hat and looks around as if he's not sure where he is. Sarah stands and takes a step toward him. "Father, are you ill?" No, I'm fine." Mary touches his arm. "Sit down, James." In a moment. James glances at the closed door and then back to his family. "I have something to tell you all. I brought someone with me from Logan." He looks at his wife. "We knew her many years ago in Nottingham." Mary blanches, reaches for the chair and slowly lowers herself into it. James continues, anxious now to conclude his news. "Anne, I told you she had come over, Mary, now a widow. She's in the wagon. I was counseled by priesthood authority." He pauses, then speaks evenly and solemnly. "Anne was sealed to me in eternal marriage yesterday in the temple of the Lord." The children stare at him. No one speaks. With difficulty, Mary stands, walks to a coat rack, and takes down a heavy shawl. "Mary, what are you doing?" "What I told you that I would do years ago. From this moment, James, I am no longer your wife. Tonight I will stay with Sister Olson." "But it is the will of the Lord." Angrily, Alfred stands, nearly upsetting the table, and steps toward his mother, helping her with the shawl. "Mother, I will take you there." "Mary!" James and the other 2 children watch in disbelief as Alfred pushes past his father, opens the door, and escorts his mother out into the night. That's as far as I imagine the scene. What we know for certain is this. In the year 1873, directly after James came home with a second wife, Mary, his wife of 33 years, left him and never lived with him again. Mary took the 3 children who were still living with them and moved about 7 miles away to a place then called Dingle Dell, now called just Dingle. She told James he was not to follow them. For the first year they lived, as they had in Kaysville, in a dugout, and then in a log cabin with a dirt floor built by Alfred and Hiram. Mary, now age 58, lace maker's wife from a comfortable residence in England, homesteaded 160 acres, all in a place where winter occasionally reached 45 degrees below zero. Snow drifts that covered the fences, scarves wrapped around faces, leaving an opening only for eyes. To Mary, all of this a preferable choice to living with a husband that, to her perception, had betrayed her. Aunt Mamie always wondered why. Why did Grandfather take this woman as his wife? What did he see in her? Grandmother was so lovely and dainty, always wore a white apron and a black velvet cap. And this other woman, well, Aunt Mamie would shake her head. I'll never understand it, she said. I thought that I would never understand it either. And I thought there was no more information anywhere that would leave some better clues. But then, out of nowhere, the final piece of the puzzle just landed in my lap. I was listening to an episode of Lindsay Hansen Park's very impressive A Year of Polygamy podcast. In the 100 podcasts in this series, Lindsay had already covered the Kirtland and Nauvoo periods, the establishment of plural marriage in Utah, and was now examining the pressure that was brought to bear on the men to enter this principle. Suddenly, I heard something that made me stand frozen at the kitchen sink. In 1873, Brigham Young gave a sermon in Paris, Idaho, in which he said that if a man refused to take a second wife in the eternities, he would lose the wife he had. Paris, Idaho? 1873? I rewound the sound and listened again. Paris, Idaho, 1873. He would lose the wife he had. I was thunderstruck and felt anger rising in my throat. How dare you say that, Brigham Young? How dare you? I called my 4 siblings and told them this new piece of family history. They, too, were very upset. My brother Warren in St. George quickly got on the internet and found the very sermon. As I read the precise words of that sermon today, I imagine another scene. This one takes place just a few weeks prior to the scene in which Mary leaves her husband, and it provides what I am confident is the missing information that explains the mystery. I placed myself there in the Bowery, a large open structure with a hardened dirt floor with wooden posts holding up a roof of thatched brush and willows. The population of the town is just over 500, and nearly all are present for this event. I stand just behind and to the right of President Brigham Young, and I place Mary and James and their children on the front row so I can see them. They are in their Sunday best, James wearing a dark suit, a gray vest, and black bow tie. Mary in her crinoline dress and black velvet cap. Fans occasionally flutter against the heat and the flies. All eyes are on their prophet president, who has come to give them the word of God. The sermon starts well. The gospel of life and salvation that we have embraced in our faith and that we profess to carry out in our lives incorporates all truth. I am here to give this people called Latter-day Saints counsel to direct them in the path of life. And I have never given counsel that is wrong. Brigham touches on many principles that I appreciate. And then Joseph received a revelation on celestial marriage, a great and noble doctrine. Now, where a man in this church says, I don't want but one wife, I will live my religion with one, he will perhaps be saved in the celestial kingdom, but when he gets there, he will not find himself in possession of any wife at all. I look out on the front row. Marioki raises her eyebrows and looks unblinkingly at her prophet. Brigham goes on. He has had a talent that he has hid up. He will come forward and say, here is that which thou gavest me. I have not wasted it, and here is the one talent. And he will not enjoy it, but it will be taken and given to those who have improved the talents they received. And he will find himself without any wife, and he will remain single forever and ever. James drops his head onto his chest and presses his fingers into his brow. But if the woman is determined not to enter a plural marriage, that woman, when she comes forth, will have the privilege of living in single blessedness throughout all eternity. Son Alfred, sitting next to his mother, reaches over and takes her hand. Mary does not flinch. James breathes deeply, looks up at Brigham, whom he now can barely see through his tears. Finally, sadly, James knows what he must do. President Young finishes his sermon and says amen. The congregation echoes amen. I glance now at the small block of delicate lace here on my desk, the work of the hands of James, the lace maker. Black lace, to mourn the death of the Queen's beloved consort. I mourn now, too. I mourn the death of the bond of love and trust my great-grandparents had created together. I used to blame James, but now I mourn for him. He acted not from love, but from fear. God's wrath is a harsh thing to fight. And I mourn for Sister Anne, the new wife. She also was directed by authority. She went, and perhaps she suffered as well, knowing that her presence broke hearts. I mourn, too, for President Brigham Young. He thought that he was never wrong. As I have suggested, my perceptions of the validity of eternal polygamy have changed tremendously over the years. But what I have found is that today, so many women especially, and men experience pain and confusion because we have not evicted from our community the ghost of eternal polygamy, and he continues to haunt. Wanting to gather more information than I had, in March of 2014, I sponsored a personal survey that I sent out on social media, asking Mormons and former Mormons to respond and answer questions about their feelings regarding the concept of eternal polygamy and the evident inequality of today's sealing practices. I was hopeful of getting a few hundred responses. On day one, I was surprised to know that we had received over 2,400 responses to that survey. And when we closed the survey down after 4 weeks, over 8,000 Mormons and formerly Mormon people, men and women, very active and inactive, most of them active, in fact, had taken the survey and at the end had left, as I had requested, their own personal stories. The first day when the survey went out, I immediately received an email from a woman that I had never met, a young woman on the East Coast. And a bit later, she sent me her story. In 2003, I married my husband in the Boston Temple. At the time, I was a senior at BYU, and my husband was freshly back from his mission to England. I consider myself a very normal, faithful, and mainstream member of the church in a very happy marriage. But after the birth of the last of our 3 children in 2010, I began to experience an inordinate fear of my own death. It was always there, this terrible anxiety. As I sifted through my fears, I came to realize that the only reason for this terror is because I know that if I die, especially young, my husband will surely remarry and be sealed to another woman, and I will then face an eternity of polygamy. It's that simple. And that fear has developed to the point that I now experience a form of hypochondria. I've been to an anxiety specialist, but because the doctrine of our church hasn't changed, there's nothing she could do for me. I've been to my doctor nearly every month in the last year, complaining about some symptom or another, because surely if we catch the cancer early, I won't die, and my husband won't get remarried, and I won't have to live polygamy forever and ever and ever. It's simple and real. It's my painful truth. I pray, I fast, I seek peace from my Father in heaven, but the peace doesn't come. I want to feel like an equal in my eternal marriage. I want to feel the assurance from God that my happiness, both now and eternally, is important to Him. But polygamy in the next life seems like a punishment, not eternal glory. I sat week after week after week and read all of the stories that came in, several thousand of them, from the survey, noting the stories themselves and the feelings that were expressed around the facts that today remain. Fact number 1, a Mormon man, widowed or divorced, can sequentially have sealed to him a number of wives, secure in the promise that they will be his in eternity. And that, of course, was so movingly expressed by the woman whose story I just read to you. Fact number 2. A Mormon widow who has already been sealed in eternal marriage to her first husband is generally viewed by men as undateable and often feels like a pariah. One such widow wrote to me, "A nice Mormon guy hung up the phone when he found out I was a sealed widow. He said he was looking for his eternal companion and I wasn't it. He said, who wants to love someone and then lose them?" Fact 3. When a woman is sealed to her husband and is later widowed or divorced, if she remarries and has children with her new husband and has not been allowed to or has not wanted to cancel that sealing, those children are automatically sealed to the first husband and not to their biological father. A story that came to me from a young man said this: "My grandmother lost her first husband in World War I. After the war, my grandparents met and raised a family of 5 children. My dad, who was very close to my grandfather, told me that Grandpa was deeply burdened and many times in tears over the fact that his 5 children were not sealed to him. He was taught and believed that his children were sealed to Grandma's first husband, and he would lose his own children in eternity." Fact 4. Many women suffer excruciating pain under the long-taught assumption that if they and their husband are sufficiently righteous, they will be expected to live polygamy in the celestial kingdom. Some men seem to look forward to that and are oblivious to the deep distress this brings to their wives. Wrote one woman in the survey, "Eternal polygamy is a searingly painful topic for all Mormon women of my acquaintance, at least those who have seriously contemplated it. I find it unconscionable and incompatible in every way with the God I worship." No, polygamy is not a thing of the past for many Mormons. The ghost creates tension in their everyday lives, compromising the way they see the one in the mirror, the one on the other side of the bed, and the one they are told thought this all up in the first place. In the book, I express my own personal vision of some ways in which we, the Mormon community, can truly come to a place that is a post-polygamy future. And here is the way that we might feel it and experience it. When the ghost is finally banished, each young and tender girl will learn at church and at home that if she marries, she will become the singular and full partner of a husband of her choice, and that her divine nature and individual worth are such that she will never be one of, here or in heaven. The writings and the folklore around polygamy, the old stories and the statements even of prophets, will have been put away in the drawer marked expired, and will generate no more fear than ghost stories told around the campfire. Every individual member of the church and every congregation will feel more open to the presence of our long-lost Heavenly Mother. For the disturbing ghost has been evicted from both earth and heaven, and the glorious goddess, full and sole partner that she is in the creation and sustaining of life, is welcomed back into the family. Marriages will be sweeter, with no holding back a piece of the heart just in case. A wife will sleep better, never startled in the night by the terrible thought, if I die before he does. An elderly widow will spend her last days with peace of mind and no disquieting thought of, I wonder if he has taken another wife already. A husband will fully invest in his one and precious partner with never a thought that she is not enough here or will be added to in heaven. A widow will be able to mourn her loss, and then, if she wishes, look forward to a new relationship in which she can be seen as the desirable woman that she is, unobstructed by prior attachment. Her love for a past husband and a present husband do not conflict, for she knows that God is not asking her to make impossible choices, and that in heaven there will be many happy surprises. A man who chooses to marry a widow will do so with full confidence that this is a blessed union and can only lead to good in this world and the next, for him, for her children, his children, their children, and for her deceased husband. The entire family invests only in love and not in anxiety, confident that each relationship, wife to husband, sister to brother, mother and father to children, is secure. The claim of our church that we create and support strong families will even be more true as the ruptures and the tensions produced by the ghost will have ceased. No one will experience apprehension over paperwork that plots out who will be with whom in heaven. All will breathe easily, confident that in the spectacular organization of the family of God, our Father and Mother in heaven, all of us will receive, with each person we have loved and been loved by, a perfectly designed relationship, with eternal joy in good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, a connection that our earthly minds cannot now begin to grasp. We will see with more clarity and with a deeper appreciation the one in the mirror, the one on the other side of the bed, and the one who thought all this up in the first place. A new buoyancy will render us a stronger people, a people more prepared to gift the Lord with our portion of Zion. Thanks for dropping by to spend a little time with me on this difficult and so deeply important subject. And in this, as in all things, to be continued.